All right, we're going. Hi guys, I'm gonna wait for a few people to jump on. Getting everything set up. Sorry, we're just a couple minutes late. Still a little bit crooked. Okay. Oops, I forgot our signal. Let's see. I'm gonna wait for some of you guys to jump on. I've been going over everything. I'm so excited about this. We've been talking about doing this for a while. I'm so excited we finally found a time to meet. I made it. I escaped from my kids. One of them was sick. I had to go back and get my computer. Amy had to bring me food because I forgot to eat dinner, but we are here, you guys. Just let a couple more people jump on. Looks like a few of you are jumping on. Say hi if you're on so we can see who's here. So quiet here.
I know. This is more company than you usually have, right?
Yes. Yes. All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I know it's a little bit after 8 and we kind of jumped on a few minutes late. All right, so I am Shauna Nicole with IntentionalDay.com. I'm so happy to have you guys on. This is my good friend Amy Schleper. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist and a diabetes educator.
Certified diabetes educator.
I knew I would mess it up. I said, I'm going to mess it up once we're live. I have just been so excited to bring her on here. We've talked about it, I don't know, for a while. She is like my go-to for everything, like, you know, when it's beyond the nutrition level that I know and comprehend, I always go to Amy. Or like in my boot camps, if there's something I'm not quite sure about, like she's who I'm calling. She's who I go to for any of the more complicated things that my brain just can't wrap itself around. She's so good with like breaking it down and just really helping you understand. I don't know, just when I had diabetes with all my pregnancies, and so whenever I went to her during that even, she just was so good with like really helping me understand like what was going on and how I could make better choices to help with that. So I just love how relatable she is and just how much she can just like break it down and help you to go take the information home and actually do something with it and utilize that. So I'm hoping that we can do that with this today. A lot of you ask about ketosis. If you've been on social media all like for the past year, I feel like you've probably seen something about like either keto dieting or keto supplements, or you probably have a friend or a family member who is all about doing like a keto diet to lose a bunch of weight or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons, but it's definitely something that we're hearing a lot right now. It definitely is a trend, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but we just wanted to talk a little bit about it because I know a lot of people don't really understand like what exactly is ketosis? What exactly does keto mean? So we're going to cover a lot of just the top questions. I've gotten a lot of questions submitted from you guys over the last few weeks whenever I've like talked about us doing this for a little while. So you guys have thrown in some of your questions, and then we're going to take questions live also. So we have everything set up. So be sure to ask your questions. We'll try to get to all of them. If we don't get to your question, we'll come back and Amy will come and answer that question later, like after we finish the video. But let's go ahead and get started. So first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Amy, and just introduce yourself to everybody because a lot of these people haven't met you yet.
Yeah, no. So yes, my name is Amy, as she said. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist. God, I've done the math on that. I guess I'm eight years now, maybe, having been a dietitian. And for the last few years, I've been have more of a specialty in diabetes. But tell about myself. Let's see. I've worked in, I started off working in some hospitals, which is not typically what most people get into the field for, but it's good experience because you see a lot of, extreme stuff. You get to know basically how to handle stuff when it's really bad nutritionally, and yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine there being a nutrition emergency, but usually in the hospital it's like 2 feedings and IV nutrition, stuff like that. And anyway, but really for the last, 4 or 5 years, I have been doing one-on-one consultations at a primary care office in town, doing a lot of just, heart disease, diabetes, all of that, but then also other things like GI stuff, like irritable bowel, heartburn, all these different things. And keto has definitely come up over the years, and so I've kind of explored and studied that a bit myself. And so I don't consider myself a keto expert, but I definitely have some knowledge on the subject, and
she though. She knows so much. She's so good at it.
If I don't know, I'll probably tell you, hopefully.
Yes. Yes. Well, and just to give you guys just a little bit of background, I've also, I've been experimenting just with the ketosis a little bit, like off and on. The last couple of months, I'm finally like really in a state of ketosis. So that's it's something I've kind of like dabbled in or thought about over, I don't know, like a few years, but probably partially because it's been such a trend, it's come up more in my mind. And so I've talked to Amy more about it and asked her more questions about it. So that's kind of, I don't know, we thought this would be a really fun topic to start with because everyone's talking about keto, and we're hoping to do like a lot of these Ask Amy live question and, you know, Q&A type segments so that you guys can ask her questions on a lot of topics, but we just thought it'd be a really fun one to start with. So yeah, so let's get started. The first one, just to get us started on the right foot, a lot of people don't even know, like, what is keto? What is ketosis? What does it even mean?
Well, so ketosis is basically the state that the body gets in when you are in a state of starvation, actually. It's this really cool adaptation that the body does when you're in a prolonged state of starvation. So it's really designed so that our bodies are designed to be able to do that. Like, so if we're, you know, hunter-gatherers, for example, and you don't always know where your next meal is coming from, and it's going to be like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever, and maybe you might have some just scarce food supply. This is a way to allow your body to still to kind of lower your metabolism in such a way that it doesn't cause any muscle wasting or minimal muscle wasting. So initially, when we are dropping calories, like a significant amount, your body can start to drop some muscle at first, and then it's like, wait a second, this is going to be a little while. So then our body starts shifting kind of some different things around where we start actually utilizing fat for energy, and in that process we also create ketones, which is what your brain can then thrive on, so it doesn't have to burn through glucose, because the brain's only going to burn glucose, which is blood sugar, or ketones, which is a breakdown product of usually fats. So so it's just a way that your body is designed to handle starvation. So it's pretty cool, actually.
It is really cool. And so usually when people talk about like a keto diet or they're doing keto, typically that means they're eating to keep their body in a state of ketosis.
Yes.
Okay.
And it basically is defined by a high level of ketones in the blood. That's really how you know. And high has different levels. I wrote the numbers down just because I know I wouldn't remember them, actually. But basically, you know, most of us are not in a state of ketosis all the time. You know, we might wake up with some ketone production, sure, but for the most part we're not. And so to be in ketosis, it's basically you're producing a lot of ketones. That's how you would define it, I guess.
And it's not, I'll go to the next thing first. So is it healthy? Like, is it healthy for your body to be in a state of ketosis?
Well, yes and no. I'm going to be that annoying person.
No.
It's clear. So really, it's an interesting time, like studying ketosis, and for some people, it actually can be healthy. There are some conditions where they're actually looking at how it can be protective for things like MS, for example. There's a researcher that I respect. Her name's Terry Walls. She has MS, and it's something that she has actually found. She's had profound improvement with her diet, but it wasn't just the ketosis. That's just kind of one thing that took it further. Her diet is based on a lot of nutrient density and avoidance of certain inflammatory foods, but ketones are known to be really beneficial for the brain. Mm-hmm. It's like not just food for the brain, it's actually very nourishing for the brain. So that's a lot of the neuroinflammatory conditions like that. It's starting to be looked at with Alzheimer's. I wouldn't say starting, it's actually, there's some good research going on right now with Alzheimer's, and some good diet advocates. A guy named, I think it's Dale Bresden, is a good researcher on that, and a good doctor that advocates ketosis for brain health. There's a lot of things from a neurological standpoint. Sure. From a weight loss standpoint, I think it can be. I think there are sometimes there are going to be certain situations where it might not be appropriate, but knowing that our body was designed to shift in that route anyway tells me it's not necessarily horrible. But I think there's so many caveats for that, sure, you know, where it might not always be healthy in certain situations.
And just to clarify, so earlier you said our body produces ketones like when we're in starvation, but doesn't mean that you're in starvation if you're in ketosis. Like, does that mean that your body's in a state of starvation?
No. I mean, it will also happen if your carbs are really low.
Sure.
I mean, I know that sounds kind of like a weird way to answer it, but that is kind of the starvation thing is really where it's set up for. Like, but we also know that if our carb intake is really low, our body will do it because our body can manufacture carbs from fat and protein. But you can't get all your proteins. Like if you don't have any protein in your diet, you will have problems. You can't just subsist on fat and carbs. You can't subsist on just protein and carbs. You also have some essential fats. If you have zero fat in your diet, you will die. Okay, but if you have absolutely no carb in your diet, your body actually will make glucose from both fat and protein if it needs to.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying don't eat any carb. I'm just saying it just shows you that's one of the few macronutrients where even if you're in small amounts, your body is designed.
Figure it out.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It really is amazing.
Yeah,
it really is. So a lot of people want to know, and I wanted to know this when I started. So how do you know, like when you're officially in a state of ketosis? How do you know, like, okay, I've arrived, like now I'm in this state. How do you know you've gotten there?
Well, it doesn't take long to get into ketosis. Actually, within a day, you can be in ketosis. Now, that's different from being keto adapted, which I'm sure we'll go into.
Yes.
But to be in ketosis, that's when you're, like I said, your blood is producing an amount of ketones above a certain point. And this is where I had my reference books sitting over there because I knew I would want them. But I think I wrote it down if you really want to know the number.
Yeah.
Actually, I put it on this little computer in front of me just for reference. All right, let's see. In case anyone, I mean, you'd have to have a meter to do this. Like, so basically, if you're really going to monitor it, you would want to actually, you know, if you're really going to do this, then you could start with like urine strips. That's one way you can measure it. But also with like the meters, kind of like people who have diabetes and check their blood sugars, you can measure it that way. So I didn't put it on here, but frankly, if you're going to get into it, you're going to know. But I believe it's above like 0.5 or 0.6 millimoles. Or something.
And if people are doing it like more for like the weight loss, which a lot of people are, and I assume probably a lot of people jumping on or are wanting to know about it for that reason. Do you feel like I know the urine strips, they aren't the most accurate way to measure your ketones, and they don't measure.
So yes, they're accurate in the beginning, but once you become keto adapted, they're no longer accurate. So. Ketosis, it doesn't take long for your body to be making ketones. Like I said, all of us actually would wake up in the morning with just a little bit of ketones anyway, because you're going all night without eating, and your body will deplete its carb reserves that are in your liver. So then your body's like, okay, we're not getting sugar now. Let's start to get something else. So you'll make some ketones by the morning, but then if you go a few days, really, I guess I would say for about the first couple of weeks of doing ketosis, which we'll get into the specifics of how you're eating and how you define that from a diet standpoint. But those first few weeks you can use urine strips, and those are measuring this one specific ketone, acetoacetate. And so that's usually the first one. That's also the one associated, I believe, with more like the fruity breath complaints. But anyway, so that's going to be high amounts on the urine strips. But then after the body gets adapted to keto and it starts realizing we're going to be in this for the long haul, starts shifting some things around, and then instead of producing the ketone acetoacetate, your body will still produce that in small amounts, but it's then now starting to make beta hydroxy. Shoot.
It's okay.
It's a big word. Beta hydroxybutyrate. I know it. I'm going to be so mad at myself after this. But anyway, so it starts shifting to that, and that's more the predominant ketone in the blood. And that can be measured with a meter. But if people are doing ketosis, and then all of a sudden the urine strips show that they're no longer in ketosis and they start freaking out, it's not because they're not in ketosis. It's just that now they're not making that other ketone. Now they're making this other one that you can still measure in the blood, just not with the urine strips.
So it doesn't mean they need to, stop eating carbs altogether.
It doesn't mean you need to get more aggressive.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you need to get more aggressive. So that's what I was trying to think for. Thank you. So does that, do you think that usually people need to shift to like doing the blood test, or do you kind of know, like once you are in that state of,
I think there are different takes on it. I think it kind of just depends. I mean, to me, I just know if I was doing it and I was really wanting to really just keep an eye. I'm kind of a little bit of a geek. I think data is a good thing, you know.
Right.
And I know it's not. I know it's expensive to do these meters where you're checking your blood. I mean, I get it, but even if it's just once a day, so that you're having an idea. And there are other options too. There's another device on the market called Ketonics, and it's a breathalyzer kind of thing. I mean, I've heard kind of mixed reviews on that. I think the blood is going to be the most accurate.
Okay.
But, yeah.
That's the hard thing for me, because right now I'm still doing like the urine strips, and it's like so satisfying, like to see the color change. Right. Like, okay, I'm in it. So I can see that would be really hard to not see that anymore and to want to get more aggressive.
Yeah. I will tell you can save some money though. Yeah. I had a patient told me you cut it lengthwise, so you get two days out of it instead of, because they're kind of wide enough. Yeah. I was like, well, that was clever.
That is a great tip. And be sure, I'm trying to keep checking on here to see if anybody's asking questions. Feel free to ask questions. We will try to ask questions as they come up, so we'll keep checking for that. Okay, so is it something that someone can do long term? Like, what is it something that you should only do for a little while, for a few weeks, a few months, or can someone do it long term?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat of a vague answer, and I think some people who are a little more specialized in this field might give you a better answer. But I really think if you're going to do it, you should go into it with a long haul mentality. To be honest with you, because first of all, I don't like the concept of diets for weight loss, like short-term diets. I don't think it's a good mentality. I think it's unhealthy for a lot of reasons. But if you're thinking, I want to do this for health reasons, and even just like right now, you're testing that, you're kind of experimenting with it, and it's not like you're just doing it and then just to drop a pound and then you're going to quit. It's not like that. You're trying to find what's optimal health for you. And so it's like in that scenario, I think that makes sense. But it's one of those things, if you're dabbling in it, it's something you want to think about. Wow, this could be great long-term, because there are some good long-term benefits. And so I think it can be good long-term. It's just, there are some different takes on whether you should cycle in and out of keto, and I'm a little rusty on that, but
that's actually the next question. So we can just go right into that. So some people ask, like, can I ever cheat? Which that's another word I hate to use, because and I hate to use like cheating when you're eating. But anyway, can I ever cheat in keto? Or in ketosis, in the state of ketosis, and is it okay to go in and out? A lot of people talk about like carb cycling and that sort of thing. So what is your take on that? I know that there's mixed, people feel different, like there's mixed reviews on that.
There's so many different approaches. Yeah. I mean, like I said, because it doesn't take long to get into keto. It's just a matter of if you want to stay keto adapted. Yeah. So being keto adapted is when, like I said, when you start switching to that other ketone, that beta hydroxybutyrate. I think I got it that time.
There you go. Yeah.
and once you're adapted, you feel better. Like you get past like that initial stage. Like there's still a lot of stuff we could probably explain about keto that we haven't yet, but basically once you're adapted, you're feeling pretty good. So if you quote unquote cheat and eat something that's really high carbohydrate, and your body's like, your body would much rather use glucose than ketones. This doesn't mean that it's because of glucose is necessarily so much better. It's just that it's just so much easier to use. It's a lot less energy expensive to make ketones. So if there's glucose, your body's going to do it. It's going to like, let's do this. So if you have a high carbohydrate food, then you're going to drop out of keto, and it might take you time to get back to being keto adapted again. And then some people, that means going through all those initial things that you go through. Do you want to talk through what those are?
Yeah, well, and also just rewind a little bit. So can someone just drop out of it? Like, if you have one, someone eats a candy bar and it has really high, like whatever, 50, 30, 40, 50 grams of carbs. Is that going to like take them out that easily? Like it could.
It could. I mean, it depends on if you also, what else you've had that day. Sure. And, gosh, I'm sure there's always an exception but yeah, it could. So, yeah.
I'm just curious. And then as far as okay, go ahead.
So yeah, you're right. The carb cycling thing, you mentioned that. So there's probably different types of carb cycling out there that I don't know about. But there are some thoughts that, people doing heavy ketosis for a really long time, that then you could have some other issues like, I've heard of people having issues with sleep, because getting some carbohydrate in the evening, like 30 grams of carbohydrate, it's not enough to throw you out of ketosis if you're managing your carbs well earlier in the day, but that can give you some good carbohydrate to actually help with dopamine production and help with sleep. So a lot of times when I work with folks, and if their diet is pretty low carb, and I'll be like, how's your sleep? And if it's not great, I'm going to be like, why don't I get you a little bit of carb in the evening? Like maybe like a small sweet potato or something with dinner, so that we're not just crazy low carb all the time, because they can have other effects. And some people are going to do better with it than others. I mean, research does seem to show that a lot more research is done on men with keto, but Men seem to do well, a lot better with it than women. There's just different hormone stuff that goes.
Why do they always seem to get it? Not easier, but I feel like guys kind of do get it easier when it comes to.
There are some things.
The dieting, food, and exercise. Like if my husband and I both start eating really healthy, and we've gone through a season that we haven't, like Ryan will like drop all the weight in a week, and I'm still trying 6 months later or something. I'm like, come on, guys, it's not fair. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of you guys probably want to know about this one. So what about avoiding high fat? Because so many of us, our whole lives, or as long as we can remember, we're told like avoid saturated fat, avoid high fat, don't eat too much, and that's kind of like the scary thing that we want to avoid. And so it's kind of hard for people to shift into like eating high fat. So how does that go into ketosis? Like, is it?
Well, I think one good thing is just we're assuming a lot of people are on this who are watching already know what a keto diet is, but really in general, a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic, keto is for the ketones. Genic means like to generate or to begin to make. So we're trying to make ketones. That's what a ketogenic diet is. And usually what that looks like from a macronutrient standpoint is like 70% fat, maybe 20% protein, and maybe 10% carbs. So that's just kind of a rough breakdown. That's kind of where ketogenic diet is currently. It didn't used to be that way. Atkins was kind of one of the original guys that really kind of made headway with that, and his diets are always way higher protein, and they keep the carb low, but it's a little bit lower fat, higher protein. They're just all about as long as the carbs are low is really the thing. So that's kind of a few differences there. But when it comes to the fat, so is fat so bad? So I just wanted to come back to that after I explained that breakdown. So is fat bad? No, I mean, it's not bad. There's been lots of interesting, documentaries, but it's beyond that. There have been a lot of papers published on this, and it's going to be controversial. I'll just tell you, if you're waiting for all the experts to agree, you're going to be waiting until it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like, I just remember working one of my jobs and just sitting in a room where we got to discuss cases like patients, and I remember this room full of doctors, like brilliant doctors, and I just remember how they were disagreeing about different things, and I was like, okay. It was so insightful, and it was just like from then on, I'm like, I am now not going to be mad if brilliant people just don't agree, because you know what? That's just what's going to happen.
And everything just varies so much from person to person and situation to situation, like whatever different health goals or health issues or health paths I feel like, people are dealing with. But, and then what about, so kind of not necessarily along the same lines, but this is a good one to go into. Does quality of food matter? So that is kind of, so like as far as fat, so okay, so I can just go eat any fat now? Like, does quality of food matter? What's your take on that?
Yeah.
It always matters.
Right? Should I just say no? Of course not.
Yes, of course not.
Yeah. So this is something that we've talked about, because when you're consuming a lot of fat, especially with ketogenic diet, it's typically a lot of animal fat, and it is crucial that it's really good quality fat.
You guys need to listen to this. This is so
important. Because whatever that animal ate, you are consuming, and you're getting in a higher amount. Like, that's one of those things that being higher up on the food chain, you're getting things in more concentrated amounts than that animal ate. Okay. So, but for example, I'll give you an example. A few years back when I did keto myself, I haven't done it in a little while, but when I did, the first time I did it, I was like, okay, this is expensive. So I didn't want to spend the money on the good stuff. I'm like, I'll just get, regular dairy. That was back when I was eating dairy. I'm not now. But anyway, lots of butter, all that stuff. And I remember I was loading up on it. And really with a ketogenic diet, to help avoid some of the downsides of the initial getting a keto adapted, saturated fat helps you. So I was pushing more saturated fat. So anyway, so day 2, I woke up, and my hands hurt so bad, and I couldn't get dressed. I'm like, I can't bend my hands. And so basically I was like, what is going on? And it took me a little while, and then I realized, oh my gosh, it was because this conventional dairy and conventional beef and pork. And so what it was is whenever you're having an animal food that's high in saturated fat in particular, you better make sure it's good quality. Now, what does that good quality mean? I know that's the next question. We are looking for 100% grass-fed when we're talking about beef, because that animal, cows were not meant to eat grains. They were meant to eat grass. And so when you're giving them grains, they create much more pro-inflammatory fats. when it comes to chickens, ideally pastured. So they're roaming around, and it's kind of hard for them to not eat some sort of feed, but basically roaming around and eating insects, like they're insectivores by nature. So, I mean, a bird that's able to run around and peck around, right? Fish, like wild caught versus farmed. And there's some more stuff there, but that's kind of a general overview, right? So, anyway, so that first time I did keto, right? Really inflamed, was breaking out really bad because dairy is a trigger for my skin. And then eventually after a few weeks, like I was losing weight and I was feeling fine, but I was like, except for this.
And you were in ketosis. Like you were in the state of ketosis, so technically you were in ketosis.
Yeah,
so.
I never had a problem adapting. But anyway, but then I finally stopped, and because it was just too painful and it was expensive, and then I just paused and I regrouped and I researched how to do this with healthy saturated fats. And when I did that, I basically redid keto again with the exact same macros, like that number I told you before, like 70% fat.
So like your fat percentage, your carbs, everything was the same.
The only difference was the quality of the fats. And so in that regard, I was doing I wasn't doing any dairy other than butter, because I learned that was really pro-inflammatory to me. I was doing like coconut oil, MCT oil, beef and pork, but from like the best quality. And like I said, the exact same amount of fat and no pain, none. Like that's just, granted, that's just me, but I'll tell you that I see that in tons of my clients. Right. It's huge. So when you're taking in fat, it needs to be good quality.
Yeah, and I feel, first of all, it looks like there's a question from Angela, from your sister. So I wish I could, I'm trying to get it to where I can read it on here, but it's not working, so you guys are just going to have to see me zoom into the screen. So most of the time, she hears people talk about keto to lose weight. Even Atkins was almost exclusively about weight loss. What are some other health benefits of doing keto? And there's some more there that I'm trying to see. Yeah, I can't see the rest of the question, but do you want to go ahead and answer that one? The other benefits besides losing weight.
So Angie, I don't know if you were on here at the beginning, which may not have been. I mean, anybody could have been jumping on. Other health benefits of keto. So, like I said earlier, is that so there's some research with neuroinflammatory stuff. So so maybe Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Actually, there's some research going on at KU right now with Alzheimer's risk and ketogenic diet being potentially beneficial. Cancer, there's some research with certain cancers. Again, I know KU is doing some research with that. KU, for anyone who's not here, university. Of course you know KU. How could I think you wouldn't know the Jayhawks?
Of course.
We're Jayhawks here. So anyway, so there's that. I mean, blood sugar benefits. I mean, it's hard for me to even believe it. There are people who have type 1 diabetes who are actually getting good numbers on that. But that still makes me a little nervous to recommend that for someone with type 1 diabetes, because they don't make any of their own insulin, so they have to manage it much more tightly. But some people do really well with that too.
Sure. So. And also, I feel like maybe someone asked, or maybe it was another time, but so it's definitely a trend right now, but it's not a new thing. Ketosis, it's not a new thing. It's been around for a long time, right? So, and it started for,
children.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So ketogenic diet, actually, I learned about it when I was in school to become a dietitian. It was first for little children who had epilepsy. So they found that they could actually really get, it was before medications were on the market, so for epilepsy. So you get a child in a ketogenic diet and they get their seizures controlled. I mean, that's huge. That's preventing brain damage. I mean, of course, that's a big deal. Right. And there are people who still choose to do that. Maybe if for some reason they don't tolerate the medications, or it's just they don't want to do the medications. So yeah, that's how it had its roots in terms of, at least in modern medicine, it has been used for that.
Right. Yeah. And then also, I don't think I said this at the beginning. So I said I'm experimenting with ketosis right now. I always say I'm experimenting because I'm not saying that you should do this or it's the best thing. And I'm still kind of deciding how I feel about it. I'm still learning more. But there's a few reasons I've decided to try it out. One of them is because I have PCOS and I have insulin resistance. And so I've talked to my doctor and we're hoping that perhaps this is a great way to get my insulin resistance under control and help with that. So there's a lot of different reasons that people might want to do it. But here, and then on the other side of that, are there any reasons to avoid it? Are there different health issues or backgrounds, or any reason that someone would not want to try this?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of potential reasons, but really the biggest one thing that I would definitely say is if there's any history of eating disorder, I wouldn't encourage this in the slightest bit, just because it's too restrictive, and it's just not good for us up here if we have any background eating disorder, any of that. It is recommended you be cautious if you've had a history of pancreatitis, if you've had your gallbladder removed. These are digestive organs that are involved in digesting fat. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I mean, you would probably then need to be using digestive enzymes, which is actually, even conventional doctors will recommend that if you've had pancreatitis, because you sustain some damage to your ability to make lipase, which helps break down fat. And then gallbladder, same kind of thing. Like, you're still making bile. Bile is something that helps emulsify fat so that your enzymes can then digest it. But if you don't have a gallbladder, you can't bolus it. You can't squirt it down there when you need to. So sometimes then we would say take bile with meals. So those are a couple things. There are some other random conditions, but I know that the reason I'm not currently doing right now, even though I have some good opinions of keto, is because I have some adrenal dysfunction, technically because I have autoimmune disease, and I've had to be on prednisone and different things over the years, and I have some definite documented adrenal suppression. And why does that matter with keto? It's because your adrenals so these are these little glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they have a lot of cool roles. One thing they do is help manage stress. They do a lot of things. But they also help manage your blood sugars. They help keep an eye on hydration and blood pressure. And so a lot of those things can be going on, affected when you're doing keto. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's dangerous. It's just that then you have to be that much more careful, like to stay hydrated and take in lots of electrolytes, make sure you're getting in plenty of salt, you know, those kind of things when you're doing keto if you have any kind of adrenal issues.
Right, which you got, most of you, if you follow me for long, you know that I also experienced adrenal failure. So just as with any big change in your diet, I feel like definitely, you know, go over it with your health provider and find out like if it's best for you, and if it's, or not if it's best for you, but if it's something you should try. And if you do, like she was saying, maybe you need some enzymes, maybe you, so she was looking at me. If you followed me very long, you know I've had pancreatitis. I've had my gallbladder removed with my first pregnancy, and I've had adrenal failure. So there's some things on this side that it's like, oh, this could be really beneficial, and then there's other things on this side that it's like you should really avoid it. So I think definitely like you need to be aware. It's not just something you jump into. I feel like it's something you need to think about and take a look at your history and decide, you know, how to pursue it if you're going to try it.
And I will say something too, is because, you know, talking to your doctor about this is certainly wise, or even if you have a nutritionist that you work with, if they're hopefully open-minded to have just any nutritionist, any doctor, if they have a need, like a knee-jerk reaction to anything, there's someone I would not enjoy working with myself, you know, just to be open-minded is such a crucial part of being a good healthcare provider. But what I will say is that a lot of doctors don't really know the difference between ketosis and ketoacidosis.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, and frankly, I haven't always really paid attention to that. You barely cover it in school. And so ketosis, like I said, it's a natural adaptation that your body can handle. But ketoacidosis is really something that we see in diabetes, especially type 1 diabetes, or people with type 2 diabetes who are on insulin, but they all of a sudden get really sick. And basically what can happen is if their blood sugars go up for some other reason, because they're really sick, but they don't have enough insulin on board. If you don't have enough insulin on board, then the ketone production can get out of control, and the ketones can build up so high that they become really acidic, and that's called ketoacidosis. And that's when it's dangerous. But that's really that's not likely to happen unless you're someone who is already needing to take insulin. And it doesn't even mean that you're going to experience it. It just means that if you're sick, or if you have you need to be well educated on what to watch for, basically. As long as insulin is on board in the right amount, you're not going to get to that acidic, dangerous place. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. I'm so glad you touched on that. Okay. I feel like I'm going to open a can of worms with this one.
Oh dear.
Because this is something that I've wondered, and I feel like a lot of people, especially because it is such a trend right now, like I have different opinions, like both ways, but so supplements, ketone supplements, that's like a huge thing right now, right? Which I don't blame them, because I think it can be beneficial, and I think like, why not like jump on that market, you know, because it really is a great thing. I mean, you know, anyway, sorry. So supplements. So if you use supplements, if I were to take ketone supplements, which I've looked into and I'm not against it, if I take those supplements, naturally that's going to put ketones like on my urine strips, for example. If I do like a urine strip, so does that mean that I'm in ketosis if I'm taking supplements that have ketones in them?
Well, I wouldn't call it nutritional ketosis, at least. I mean, it would probably be more like an artificial ketosis. So what I assume you're talking about, there's some of these, we also call them endogenous ketones, exogenous ketones. Okay. So basically, it's like taking ketones in the form of a supplement instead of even letting your body make them. So nutritional ketosis is when you're actually making your own ketones to fuel the brain, and that's where you're getting a lot of benefits, the supposed benefits that come with a ketogenic diet. But if you're taking ketone supplements, now some potential benefits would be if you do have some sort of brain health issues, and I don't mean like weird, I don't mean like mental health or anything like that. I just mean like if your brain is, for whatever reason, like we were talking before, it can actually be really good for the brain in many ways. Like I even remember hearing about, and maybe you guys have seen this, there's some dog food you can buy that has MCT oil added, and it's to help produce ketones, and it actually helps the dog's cognition. Like it's the ketones are good for the brain, they just are, but it just depends on what your goals are. Like if you're trying to do it for focus, okay, it might be fine. But if you're trying to do it from the goals of the weight loss standpoint, you're probably not going to get much out of it, because you're kind of just like you're trying to trick your body in some way. Your body's not actually, it's the process of your body generating the ketones is really kind of where people are getting weight loss benefits. Does that kind of
that makes sense. So correct me if I'm wrong. So what you're saying is there's definitely benefits of using like the different like supplements or I can't remember what you called it. But there's,
exogenous ketones.
Yes, that, I'll let you say.
It was hard for me too.
So there are definitely benefits of it. Like maybe if someone just wants like a boost, like, of brain function or energy or, for other brain health issues. But it's not, if someone's really wanting to be in a state of, of ketosis, what is the other, like keto adapted?
Yeah, right.
That's not going to take you there if you're not doing the right nutrition also.
I mean, and a lot of people, I have encountered some people who sell them and who consume them, and they feel so much better, and maybe they're getting some weight loss. I'm like, okay, I just can't speak to it because I haven't researched it, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And from what I have read up a little bit that's kind of But
would it be
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so would it be helpful for one that wants to get into a state of ketosis, but maybe they're struggling getting there? Would it be like a good help there?
That is a great question, and I don't really know the answer to that. But that's a really good. Yeah, I like how your mind works.
That's kind of like when I first started looking into it more. I was it took my body a while to transition to a state of ketosis, or at least for it to show up when I was testing for it. So I was like, maybe I need to buy some of these just to help, or maybe it would just help me feel better and feel like I'm in a state. I'm not sure.
Well, there's certain fats that will help you get there better.
And MCT oil, that's great.
MCT oil can. I mean, some people would say it's still somewhat of an artificial boost, but it's just that it's so readily converted into ketones. So that's one way to help it. Really, I would just say, from what I have read, and I can't tell you all the mechanisms as to why, but a diet, when you're doing a ketogenic diet, higher saturated fat seems to help you get there faster. Also, can I mention a few things also? Because some people are like, how do I get there? Yes. And if, when you're trying to adapt, so like those first, sometimes it can be 2 to 3 weeks of, you're following a ketogenic diet and you feel cruddy, right? And some people, they're not yet keto adapted. And so
you can feel really bad at first. I felt terrible the first few days. I did.
I was lucky. I never felt sick.
I did.
It was one of those. But I also read up, like Miss Study Girl here. Yes. I mean, I was really pushing the saturated fat. Lots of electrolytes, lots of sodium helped, really staying hydrated. But, okay, so my point was, how do you get there faster? So things that can delay your getting adapted is if, this might be part of what you're going through, I wonder, is if you're really pushing yourself hard in the gym, actually. Or if you're really stressed. No, never. She's inspiring to all of us. Come on. But the exercise itself, depending on the intensity, can actually push your blood sugars high later. It's a stress response by your adrenals, and they send out this thing called glucagon, which then releases some glucose from your liver. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but at the same time, if you're trying to get get keto adapted, and you're really trying to kill yourself in the gym, maybe not that, but if you're pushing yourself a little intensely, that might be spiking your blood sugar enough. So it wasn't that your food was coming in with high carb, is that your body was generating it.
So here's my question there is, what about, so kind of my mindset that obviously I didn't do enough studying for, is I was thinking, I'm using my carb stores. Like, why doesn't it?
The body's so smart. Is that hormone
so
dance? Yeah,
okay.
that's a lot. That's something I run into with just people with like people who have low blood sugars or other weird blood sugar swings, and I'm like, what's happening in the gym? And when I see that they're pushing themselves beyond above a certain heart rate, actually for very long, that can explain why they're so exhausted after the workout, and they're having weird blood sugar swings.
I feel like we could go into a whole other
we totally will.
Like, we'll go into this too, because I'm like, actually, I like.
But that's an interesting one. Or if you're really just stressed in general, that can also, if you're trying to get keto adapted and you're just dealing with a lot of stress in your life, your blood sugars are going to be higher because your body's trying to manage that stress, and then you're like, you can't stay into ketosis because you've got this sugar that's in your bloodstream now, and your brain's going to take up the sugar. Right? Why would it bother making ketones if it's got glucose?
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting.
It is interesting.
There's just so much. Nothing is a simple answer when it comes to health and nutrition. Does anybody have questions? I'm looking to see if there's anything new. I don't see any new ones that popped up. Okay, so I think this question. So I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to say what I think it means, because it kind of sounds a little funny. Okay. But is a keto diet okay for kids? Is it fine for them to eat keto diet? I think what people are meaning with this question is like, if maybe a couple are doing, like maybe me and Ryan decide to do it together. So does that mean we have to fix like completely different food for our kids, or is it okay for them to eat that food? Like what does that mean people have to fix totally different food, or how would they approach that?
Right. Well, and so obviously I'm not going to be encouraging a ketogenic diet for your children.
Right.
I mean, that should only be done in certain therapeutic situations. There's so many reasons you don't want to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, Shauna and I have had this conversation many times.
I've went off about this before.
And I agree with her 100%. I just don't think it makes any sense for mom and dad, or mom to be eating her own thing and having to be making a separate meal for dad and the kids or whatever.
Just add a few carbs, guys.
Just make some rice on the side, or make some potatoes. They'll be fine. Yes. Because, something we really I didn't delve into as much before when you asked it was the concern about fat, and if you're giving them good quality fats.
Good quality. It's all about the quality.
Huge. And you're keeping their carbs. We're not designed to be eating crazy amounts of carb. The USDA
a lot of people do,
Yes. It's been too high and so really it doesn't hurt us to eat a little bit more fat, a little bit lower carb, and if you can compensate by dropping the carb down a little bit, then it's okay to have a little bit higher fat. Now, the one exception that I would say, there are some people who have some genetic mutations to where their cholesterol intake is going to be really sensitive to fats, especially saturated fat. Sure. Okay, so there are those people. And so it's this gene called ApoE. And if you have certain alleles, here's where it gets really sciencey. But if you've ever had your 23andMe done, there are ways to find this out. But basically, if you have this allele, the 4 allele, then you are more sensitive to saturated fat in your diet, and your cholesterol will likely go up to saturated fat. However, yes, your heart disease risk could go up with that. That has been documented. But there's some other sides of that I have not studied as well, but basically where then your brain might actually benefit from that fat more. So it's like it's Alzheimer's risk goes up with that 4 allele as well. And so that fat might actually be good for your brain, just not good for your heart. So it gets a little tricky. So I will say that there are some people who genetically, they might not do as well with that fat, but.
And if you're just jumping on, or if you jumped on since we covered it, be sure to go back and watch when Amy just explains to us why it's so important to eat quality fats, quality foods, quality meats. It's really important. It's not just hype. There's a reason. So go back and watch that for sure. I'm not really sure why this is here. We already answered this. Oh, I guess are we through them all? I think we went through all the cards. So let me know. Do any of you guys have any questions? It can be about something we covered. If you're just jumping on, feel free to ask a question. That's okay. If it's something we already covered, we can let you know, or maybe it's something new. We're looking through to see if we missed any questions that we were already submitted.
Okay, covered that.
Yeah. Trying to think if I have any other. So one thing, when I was first really experimenting with this and entering the state of ketosis, we talked a little bit about this, but is it hard to stay like in that beneficial state? Like we talked about like kind of going in and out, but once your body adapts, is it true that sometimes the amount of carbs that you can handle can sometimes adapt as well, and you can have a little more?
Exactly. Actually, a lot of times, there are a lot of different, like say Atkins or whatever, different resources out there now for keto that will tell you initially to try to go under 30 grams of carb when they're doing keto it's kind of like an induction thing. That's what Atkins at least calls induction phase. But then once you're adapted, then you can often go up to like between 40 and 60 grams carb, depending on the person's. If you're monitoring your ketones, that'll tell you if that knocks you out. But for example,
and are you talking about net carbs, or are you talking about
net carbs?
Okay,
good job.
Okay,
good job. So net carbs is basically total carb minus the fiber and minus the sugar alcohols. If you're doing that, so sugar alcohols are like xylitol and some of these sugar substitutes that aren't like chemical substitutes, so I'm comfortable with using those in small amounts. So what I was going to say is there's Dr. David Perlmutter. He is a neurologist and in a functional medicine background, and he is a big advocate of keto for brain health. And I know his diet plans tend to be more up in that 40 to 60 grams carb.
Okay.
But from a long-term standpoint, after you get initially adapted, that might be more sustainable. And it's worth pointing out, carbs are where you're getting your veggies. It's where you're getting a lot of your nutrients. And so that is one of my concerns with ketogenic diets is sometimes all the veggies can go by the wayside, and that just doesn't make any sense.
No.
We need those nutrients.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of like Terry Walls, who I mentioned earlier, who has MS and has had a lot of benefits from it. And the crux of her diet is nutrient density. And so she aims for 9 cups a day of veggies. 9 cups.
You told me before. That's
yeah.
How many people do you know that get 9 cups? I feel like on a really amazing day, I might, but most days I struggle with that.
Hard. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. But it also just shows you like how far away our plates have gotten from where they should be. A question is, do you have any favorite resources for learning about the keto diet?
Oh goodness. Well, there are a lot of resources, but I feel like there's so many new ones coming out. It's hard for me to keep up. Some that I have looked at in the past. There's a diet called Keto Clarity by Jimmy Moore. He's not a doctor, but he's done keto himself, and he's interviewed a lot of experts, and so his resources are pretty helpful. Like I said, Grain Brain talks about a little bit. That's a David Perlmutter book.
And we'll be sure to I'll link all of these below afterwards so that you can find them. So don't worry if you didn't catch the names.
And I wrote a few down just for my reference, but those aren't exactly handbooks. But if this is something that even if you're really concerned about fat and you're just like, I don't know about this, I need to study more, then what I did write down is a book called The Big Fat Surprise, and it's by a gal named Nina Teicholz. You might just Google the book name. That might be easier. The Big Fat Surprise. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay.
And another book that it's on my list, and it's called Death by Food Pyramid, and it's just supposed to be phenomenal, just really looking at the science of it all. But in terms of handbook for how to get into it, I know that there are a lot of great resources out there that I'm not as yet familiar with. Sure. But one that I have used in the past, like I said, when I was doing keto in the past, I actually kind of liked some of the recipes by Dave Asprey and his Bulletproof Cookbook.
Yes, I've used several of those.
I don't like everything he has to say necessarily, but his recipes were actually kind of the foundation of how I did it better.
You actually introduced me
to
it. Yeah.
That's right, that panna cotta.
Yes,
it's a really good
that.
panna cotta recipe.
So
but I use this like coconut milk, and but they have a really good ice cream in there too that you would like. That the only dairy is butter, and it uses eggs and MCT and coconut oil. It's really, really good.
I love ice cream.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we went a little bit over, so we will probably close it up. But I know. But if you guys have any questions, I know it goes so fast. If you guys have any questions, then type them even after we end, and we will go back and we will try to address all of those questions. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I just love nerding out with and geeking out with Amy. She's so great. Please show her some love and like this video, share it if you think anybody could use any of this information. Be sure to go back to the beginning if you missed some of it, because there's a lot of good info in there. And another exciting thing that we are going to work on is we are talking about working on like a healthy keto meal plan, like a meal prep plan. So that's something we're going to work on, which I think will be really fun. So you can look for that in the future. And another thing you can do is let us know other topics. It doesn't have to do with this at all. It can have to do with this, but if you have any separate topics altogether, like health and nutrition topics that you'd love for us to cover and answer questions about, let us know in the comments, and we'll try to make that happen. So I just so appreciate you guys jumping on here. It was really fun. And Amy, thank you so much just for coming out and giving us your time and sharing some of your amazing knowledge and wisdom with us. We appreciate it so much. And we will also link Amy's page on here. So if you have questions, or if you're local and you'd love to like set up an appointment to whether it's to talk about this or something else in depth with other nutrition or other health issues that you want to try to take care of with nutrition and diet. So we will link that on here as well. And now people are writing. You guys are all going to start writing. Like, where were you? No. So let's see. Brooke said, Amy, start a Facebook group with all things keto and invite me. Come on, Amy. We will link her page though, and she will have lots of other good information besides keto on there. But I'm sure she'll cover some keto also. So thank you so much. You guys have a great Sunday night and a great week. I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.